Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome in. Apparently, I can't stream to Facebook anymore because they've changed the rules where you can only go live when you have 100 followers. So, yeah. Hi, Kira. He's wondering who I'm talking to because I'm staring at a screen. No, I was just streaming to Facebook Gaming. It becomes so old. Yeah, we're not that far from 40 years old. It's sad to say. Oh, I'm not even gonna turn on the Rusty's farm right now. We're almost Misha's age. I have all the animals in here with me. Apparently. Like closer to Misha than Lizzie, yeah. We just don't do the murders. Or tortures. Anywho. Hey, Becca. Last time in Wild Magic. I was gonna say Kel. I was like, nope, not Kel. Dane. They're on the road to pirate. They were on the road to pirate swoop. Dane is getting control of her powers. She can heal now. She met some griffins. Along the way. And now they've gotten to pirate swoop. I really don't have a lot to talk about right now. Chapter 8. Pirate swoop. They climbed a tall mound to enter the castle. Dana was impressed by the thickness of the walls around the outer court, and by the alert and well-armed guardsmen. The Baron of Pirate Swoop kept his home in fighting order. A man in gold-trimmed brown ran up to Thayet, bowing repeatedly as he talked to her. The Queen signaled Buri, and the second in command turned in her saddle. "Riders, this way!" She and Sarge led the trainees to long, low buildings along the wall. Stables by the look of one, and the guard barracks. Anua came up beside Dane. "Wait here. I want them to stable their mounts so they can unload the carts." He grinned. "A bit of advice, for what it's worth. Never do anything you can order a recruit to do for you." Stop going after my crowhead. Dane grinned. "I'll remember that." Movement caught her eye. A flag was being run up on one of the 3 towers, and the breeze caught it. She grinned. It was a gold lioness rampant on a red field, same as Alana's shield. On the tower next to it was a brown flag decorated with a gold key. "The Baron's flag," Anua said, noticing the direction of her gaze. Those flags mean the Baron and the Lady Knight are both in residence. No flag for the Queen? She asked. Anya shuddered. Gods, no. It's bad enough the whole palace knows where the summer training camp is, without crying it from the towers. George has made this place strong, but why ask for trouble when you don't need it? Broomstick Thayets in Alana's mounds as the woman stretched. Suddenly shrieks filled the air. It took Dane a moment to realize the sound was not birds, but children screaming. Mama! Mama! A pack of them dashed through the inner court's gate and separated. 3 to Alana, 2 to the Queen. Thayet's pair, both dark-haired, a boy and a girl, bowed when they were a foot away from their mother and then threw themselves at her. The prince is 9, the princess 8, Anya explained. They asked to watch the training this year instead of staying with the younger children at the summer palace. Alana's 3, the tallest true redhead. The younger 2 blonde with a touch of red in their locks. Didn't even stop to bow. She laughed and knelt to return their hugs, disappearing for a moment into their bodies. You'd think they'd been brought up in a barn, wouldn't you? A lilting... Kira, leave the cats alone. A lilting voice asked nearby. Kira? Do you want to be chased by Becca again? It's alright. Dog is trying to play with cats, and the cats are and trying to do so with the one cat who will actually chase her around, but with claws. The lilting voice asked nearby, clamming on their ma like she was a hobby horse. Dane looked down from her seat on the wagon. The speaker was a tall, broad-shouldered man with brown hair lightened by the sun. His nose was too big for good looks. But there was a wicked twinkle in his large, green hazel eyes. And his grin was catching. He wore a shirt and breeches and had come from watching the sea, to judge from his tousled hair and the spyglass in his hand. She had to return a smile. He must love her very much. She's easy to love, he replied. For you, maybe, Anya said, dismounting. I know 80 offenders against the king's law who don't find her at all lovable. Hello, Baron. Anya, every time I see you, God be my witness, you make me wish I wasn't married. They hugged vigorously, slapping each other on the back. You never pull in my harness, George. Dane, this gentleman... Don't call me gentleman. I work for a living, he interrupted. Dane grinned. Sarge often said the same thing. This nobleman is Baron George of Pirate Swoop. George, this is Dane, my assistant. A large hand was offered. Dane shook it. Like all the nobles she'd met in this strange country, his palm was calloused. Welcome to Pirate Swoop, Mistress Dane. How did you fall into such bad company? She blushed, not knowing how to take this charming man. Stop flirting with her, George. You'll only break her heart. Anya winked at Dane, who winked back, thankful for the rescue. How long have the prince and the princess been here? A week only, the Baron replied, taking his sharp eyes off Dane. In a quieter tone, Anya asked, Any trouble? George's eyes flicked to Dane. You can trust her, Khmer assured him. We all do. Dane blushed again when George raised his eyebrows. That's quite a recommendation, young lady. I didn't think Anya even liked two-leggers. Looking around, he said, Bless me, so you did take on Evan Lars. Seeing them, Evan waved and loped over, his long legs taking him across the outer ward's court in seconds. "George, I made it," he said, panting as he offered his hand. "I told you I would. Wait till you hear about the trip we've had. Did you know you have griffins nesting up the coast?" "I've got the whole village quartered here," George said, making a face, "eating our food and begging me to send soldiers after them. Tell me true, is it really griffins or just a pair of mean albatrosses?" "It's griffins, and you don't have to send a company," Evan assured him. "Dane here got them to make peace." "I didn't get them to do anything," Dane retorted. With the charming Baron, she might be tongue-tied, but never with Evan. They don't do anything they don't want to, but they promised the Queen not to attack people or livestock, he told George. "And they can't lie, so I believe them." "Wait," he ordered. "You've had speech with them? And made a treaty?" "This is a fine welcome you've given me, laddie buck," Alana said, trying to imitate her husband's speech as she approached. She bore a gold-haired child on each hip. "Here I am, home from the wars, and you let me be swarmed over by barbarians whilst you flirt with my friends." "Excuse me," George said gravely to the adults, and to the children he plucked from his wife's hold. Gripping the lioness firmly, he bent her back in a prolonged kiss that looked like a romantic scene in a play. Everyone, even the men-at-arms posted along the walls, clapped, whistled, and cheered. "Does anyone in this land act like they're supposed to?" muttered Dane. Anya heard her question. "They do in lots of places," she said, eyes twinkling. "But this isn't lots of places. It's Pirate Swoop. And if you think this is strange, just wait till you've been here a couple of days." Exploring after the evening meal in the castle's great hall, Dane got directions to the observation deck on top of the third largest tower. Here the wall rose out of stone cliffs. Looking down, she saw rocks, a thread of beach, and heavy waves. Relaxed, she watched the sun dip itself into the ocean as the cool breeze blew across her face. She liked the swoop, she decided. If she had to live within the stone walls all her days, this would be the kind of place she'd want. "Beautiful, isn't it?" The lioness relaxed against the stone wall at Dane's side. "I'm so glad to be home." "You have a home to go to," the girl thought, and was immediately ashamed of herself. How could she begrudge the knight a place of her own? "I don't see how you could ever leave this," she admitted. "I don't either, except I took an oath as a knight, then as a champion, long before I came here, and I keep my oaths." They fell silent again. It's odd to see her in a dress, Dane thought, wearing perfume. It's pretty, whatever it is, and pearl earbobs and silk, and yet she fits here. She sighed. "I wish this were my place," she thought wistfully. "I bet I could fit here too." A distant cry fell upon her ears. She and Alana looked north and saw a bird shape wheeling over the ocean. "Griffins," Lioness remarked. "It's like a story, or a bard's tale." "So are lady knights," thought Dane, but she kept that to herself. If only the griffins were all of it. They looked up. Only a handful of clouds were in the sky, but they knew there was a stormwing behind one, and that more waited up and down the coast. "My father is a scholar." The woman's voice was soft. "The king asked him to report on what he could learn about the stormwings. He says they live for destruction and the fear that destruction provides. They eat only the products of war, famine, and disease, the bodies of the dead. They drink only the energy of human suffering and fury. They've had a long fast, 400 years worth, in the divine realms. I have a feeling they won't be as easy to send back as they were to set free." "And back?" Dana had a thought, and she didn't like it. They had to be locked in the divine realms. Maybe they were never supposed to be there. Maybe they're our predators. "Our predators? Surely. She tugged one of her curls. You speak of locking them up again as if it can be done. What if the gods don't allow it, because the Stormwings are supposed to be here, not there? Alana winced. That's a very cheerful thought. I wish you hadn't come up with it. You're right. We have a lot of battles ahead. Dane slept in the stable loft, cushioned by the bodies of the cats, many dogs and cats. At breakfast, she listened as the trainees were given a day off, except from caring for their mounts. That meant a day off for her as well, and she could use one. All her shirts needed mending, and a wash wouldn't hurt any of her clothes. Getting directions to the castle laundry, she returned to her loft and gathered her clothes. On the way back from the laundry, she found Zelda checking the saddlebags that had been issued to each trainee for the trip south. Smile, the brunette said, shoving her belongings into a pack. I'm quitting. I've had enough fun in the wilderness. Dane glanced away. She wouldn't miss the girl at all. Don't look so pleased. Zelda folded the bags and hung them next to her tack. One of these days, you'll be packing yourself. Me? Whatever for? The older girl's smile was bitter as she looked at Dane over. Are you blind? How long can they afford to keep you on, do you suppose? After that thing with the griffins, I figured it was all over for you. Dane felt cold. I've no notion what you mean. What happens if they're in battle and you get hurt? You think they can risk their mounts coming to your rescue? I don't. The girl shouldered her pack as Anya came in. Don't say I didn't warn you. Anya looked at her suspiciously. You'd best get to the wharf. That boat won't wait. Ella gave both of them an ironic salute and was gone. Anya rolled up her sleeves. This is a surprise inspection. Let's see how the trainees' mounts look while they're off relaxing. You start on that side. I'll start here, she ordered. We can talk while we work. Look at everything, mind, nose to tail. What poison was she dripping in your ear? Dane stroked the muzzle of the first pony with a hand that shook. She said the riders can't afford to keep me. She's right, isn't she? The animals know I'm in trouble. They will come to me. Ymir himself said I couldn't shield all my wild magic. Maybe that's so. Anya ran a brush over Pedrak's minch to see if extra hair fell out after morning grooming. But it wasn't the riders that hired you. It was me. As long as I say so, you work for me, not them. How can you do that? She whispered. You're a rider. No, I'm a civilian expert. I deal with whatever concerns horses, and that's all. I'm no soldier. Anya pointed at her with a brush. You saved my life in that marsh. And at the palace. When the Stormwings hit, you saved Numair. He was the first person here I knew liked me for myself. I won't let you down. She reached over and dabbed a tear rolling down Dane's cheek. Those of us that's horse-hearted have to stick together, all right? Dane nodded. But you'd tell me if I wasn't giving satisfaction? Anya grinned. If we spend more than the morning checking these mounts, I will be most unhappy. I was planning to take the afternoon off. Dane went to work, smiling. They had just finished when hoofbeats rang outside, and the voice yelled, Dane? You said you were in here. She ran outside as Numair climbed off his sweat-stained gelding. Come with me, he ordered. You have to find the Stormwings. She shaded her eyes to look at him. What do you mean? Aren't they behind their little clouds being sneaky? He shook his head. They're gone. Vanished. He spent the afternoon on the observation deck with Numair and Alana, searching as far out as she could drive her magic for any sign of the immortals. The gifted ones applied themselves to scrying or looking. Numair used a round crystal he carried in a pouch. Alana a mirror with, Dane was tickled to see, roses painted on the back. It's not to my taste, the knight said dryly. This is from Tom, my oldest. A birthday gift. It's a thought that matters. She glanced at the back of the mirror, winced, and turned it to the reflecting side. That's what I keep telling myself, anyway. And it makes a very good scrying tool. For herself, Jane sank deep into meditation, listening up and down the coast. She heard the griffin female return to the nest with food. Griffin males, it seemed, helped to brood the eggs. Her friends among the sea lions were prospering, as were other seals and sea lions. A number of whales had come to swim in the waters around the swoop, but she didn't have time to attempt to speak with them. Crossing her fingers, she hoped that they'd stay close enough for her to get a chance. Other sounds she identified as two groups. Mary called them pods of dolphins. At last, she drew her senses back to the castle. Nothing. Alana grimaced. No luck for us either. So our friends have given us the bag. The Baron had joined them at some point. Seeing Dane's puzzled look, he said, they've escaped us. It thieves can't. Meaning, a delightful trick whereby you wait for your pursuer and slip a large bag over his head to blind him. Dane scowled. Well, I'm not blinded, and they aren't there. George smiled at her. I believe you. He looked at Numair. Is there a way to nab one of these beasties for questioning? Numair frowned. I'm not really sure. If we can kill them, I assume we can capture them. You know, it's moments like this that I really miss the university library. We're working on ours, Alana pointed out. Maybe the king has the proper books already. And, wait, what about the golden net? Numair's face lit. You know, with a few adjustments. My lords and ladies, a proper man in the library of a castle servant had come up to the deck. We dine in a half an hour. I think I have this basic spell in a book I've been reading, Alana told Numair. If you want to come take a look? They followed the servant down into the tower, talking about spells and their variations. Dane looked at the sun. It was low. No wonder I'm hungry. If you hear one of those nasties again, let's catch it, George said. I don't think we'll get anywhere talking to one, she pointed out. The Baron's grin was neither warm nor friendly. You leave that to me. They studied the ocean together. It's strange how folk look at a thing. Numair sees what's coming to us. He thinks of the return of old magic. Magic that's controlled by none and understood only by a few. My wife sees a threat to her kingdom. Me, I'm a commoner born and bred, title or no. You know what I think of? Omen's importance. Like the red star that blazed over us when the Emperor Orzon was crowned 7 years back. Then maybe we're lucky. The Stormwings are giving us so much time to think about them before they do something really nasty, Jane said. George laughed. Now there's a practical way to look at it, and I thank you. It does no good to brood about what might come. He offered his arm with a bow. Let's go to supper, and drink to the confusion of our enemies. Numair kept her at her lessons until midnight hour was called. She trudged back to the stable with the riders used, yawning heartily as she climbed to her loft bed. Her mind spinning with new animal groups, she kept her eyes open barely long enough to pull on her nightshirt. She awoke to a stable cat giving birth near her ear, and 3 children, a girl and 2 boys, watching her solemnly. I suppose you're fair proud of yourself, Dane told the cat. My wondrous book says you're a feline, and a carnivore, and a vertebrate, and a mammal. I wish the them that wrote it could smell around here right now, and maybe they wouldn't call you all those pretty names. The girl wriggled out from between her blankets and grabbed her clothes. The feline was busy cleaning the last of the new kittens and refused to reply. It's too early to be paying social calls, she told the children. Our mama said you're a mage. That was Thiet's daughter, Lassen. She took after her handsome father, sharing his blue eyes and coal black hair. Dane sat on her bed. I'm no mage, she grinned. New mare calls me magelet, but that's just for fun. It's too early to be answering questions. Ma says you help animals. Tom's hair was redder than Alana's, and he had George's green hazel eyes. We brung you him. He was on the wall. The two older children lifted a basket and offered it to Dane. Inside lay an osprey, a fishing hawk, glaring at her over a broken leg. If the cat hadn't been giving birth close by, she would have known about him already. She sighed and took the basket. It's all right then. You can go now. Turning her attention to the bird, she carefully took him from the basket. How'd you manage this, sir? He shrieked and slashed at her when she joggled his leg. I'm sorry, she murmured, gentling him with her mind. I'll make it better. I hope. She went to work, unaware that the children watched her, fascinated. Bird bone was easier than otter bone to mend. It was thinner and hollow. Better still, it wasn't a clean break, but one of the green stick kind, which meant the bones simply had to be fused together again. Opening her eyes, she saw that the break was healed, the bird's pain gone. She was dripping sweat onto him. Sorry, she murmured as he shook himself. He cocked his head, looking at the mended leg. He was impressed and intrigued by what she had done. The moment, however, what he was most interested in was a nap. She smiled. Just when you wake up, obey the rules. No hunting or teasing any other creatures in the castle. They're all my friends, too. Oh, hi, Becky and Brandon. Welcome in. Where was I? They're on Trovo. They're on Trovo. I'm no longer streaming on Kick because apparently Kick is being run by homophobic pedophiles, etc. So I'm staying away from Kick from now on. So I got a little artist bad. I don't remember. Yeah, I set you as my artist. You gonna drive tomorrow, Wednesday, and make my brain better. Yee. Okay. Reading a dungeon meshy and making me want to cook. What's dungeon meshy? Or is that smut that you've been reading again? Some people go in the dungeon and eat all the monsters. Okay. What form of eat? Fun. Okay. I get you, Poppin. um. Cool. How to subscribe to me, Clemens? I just started streaming on Trovo, so I'm not affiliated or subscriptions just yet. I don't think. I doubt. So I need to update that stuff. I believe anyway. How does subscriptions work? Oh. Oh, I guess you just click on the subscribe button. Okay. Okay, whatever. Okay. Where are we? The Osprey understood. She settled him on a wooden rail and brought water from the stables below, promising she'd see him later. She gathered her things again and left. Her early visitors waited for her by the stable door. You missed breakfast, Prince Rold said. We brought you some. She handed over a napkin wrapped around sweet rolls. Thank you, said Dane. Yeah, that was very kind. She wolfed two of the rolls, knowing her manners were terrible and not caring. Papa gets hungry when he's been using his gift, remarked the princess. Dane wiped her mouth. It was good of you to bring the osprey and the food. I thank you. Now I think you should go back to the nursery, please. Won't the servants be missing you? We are too old for the nursery, replied Tom, with the dignity of his 6 years. Only the twins have to stay there. They are 4. Poor things. Listen, I have to bathe and then I work for the riders, which means I have no time to chat. Goodbye. He looked at her hopefully. What was she supposed to say? At home, she'd never spoken with a child. Parents had always kept them from her. If I ignore them, they'll go away, she decided, and went to the baths. When she came out, they were waiting. They trailed her to the stable, admiring the new kittens while she stowed her gear. They followed her back down to the ponies and helped as she looked after Zelda's old pair as well as Mangle and Cloud, holding brushes, pails, and rakes for her. They were still with Dane as the trainees, subdued after a morning conference with their officers, came to look after their mounts. Sayette broke out laughing when she saw what was going on. "I'm sorry, Dane," she said, giggling, "but it's like ducklings. No offense, children." "He said we ought to learn more about the stables, Mama." Kalassin was more outspoken than her brother. "You said if we wanted to come with you and the riders, when we're older, we'd have to take care of our gear and all." "Dane has to decide if you can stay, however," the queen said. The girl wished the children wouldn't look at her piteously. Sayette was right. Those like ducklings. She could have shot them easier than resist those eyes. "Anua? Sarge?" she asked, hoping. They shook their heads. "Look at it this way," the Bury said. Bury said, You'll need help with the new extras. JC and Canelm handed in resignations a little while ago. Starting tomorrow, we're taking groups outside the castle walls for days at a stretch. You won't even have Anua then." Zelda had been right, Dane thought, looking at Bury and the queen. "They know I won't be helpful in the field. Not if the ponies obey me first." A gentle hand rested on her shoulder. Anua's. "Somebody does have to care for the washout's horses," the Chimera whispered. "It's real work, not just something to do because we haven't the heart to throw you out. And you need to stay close and study with Numair, remember? Once you start, no quitting," Sayette told her children. "If you agree to help Dane, that's what you do. It's a responsibility. You can't stop just because you're tired of it." The two coal-black heads nodded seriously. "Tom?" the lioness asked. "I don't think he's old enough to bind him." Dane thought, but Tom was already promising. She recognized the expression on his face. He might only be 6, but he would keep up with Roald and Kalassin, or die trying. "Which means I'll have to watch him," she thought with a sigh. Ducklings. A week passed. It was easier to manage them than she expected. Being able to meet wild animals was a powerful attraction, one the ducklings did not tire of and would not risk losing. Though she incurred the wrath of all the nursery helpers but the chief one, Maud, by introducing their charges to savage beasts, she presented her friends to weasels, crows, bats, and deer. She let them watch as she worked to heal one of the dogs who'd had a paw smashed by a passing wagon. She was surprised to find Roald and Kalassin did help in the stable, and that only Tom's size kept him from doing as much. She knew from her meetings with the twins that his maturity came from the possession of two appallingly lively younger siblings. Roald and Kalassin also had younger siblings, but their maturity seemed to result from what people expected Tartalian royalty to do. She was surprised and a bit shocked to learn that they fed and groomed their ponies at home. She had never heard of princes and princesses who had chores. I'll be a page in a year, Roald pointed out one day as they helped with the constant chore of mending tack. They had settled on the flat area in front of Dane's stable, as she had come to think of it, as a place for such chores. I'd have to learn them anyway. It's best to know as much as I can ahead of time. Papa says later, the other lessons will keep me busy. I'll be a page too, Kalassin had insisted Dane call her Callie, as the children did. Papa said girls can be knights, so that's what I'll do. Dane was about to ask Tom if he wanted his shield when a messenger came through the gate at full gallop, covered with dust. The man slid from his horse as hostlers came to take it. Lioness, he gasped. Message for the lioness. The servant bowed. This way. Tom, the princess, and the prince watched, all looking grim. Great, Tom said. She has to go away again. Callie sighed. It's like Mama in raiding season, she told him. We're lucky to have mothers who fight. Our fathers must stay home and protect their people. Daw fights when they hit the village. Tom was a stickler for fact. Papa fights if he can. Roald tried to smile and failed. Poor things, Dane thought. They missed their folks coming and going all the time. At least while Ma and Granda were alive, they were there. How about a run to the beach, she asked. The seals aren't that far out. If we ask nice, maybe they'll come in. Maybe I should wait, replied the red-headed boy. I'll have Gimpy keep watch, Dane wheedled. Usually the Bloodhound's name made Tom smile, but not now. He'll fetch us if they'd saddle Darkmoon. I'm not a baby. I won't cry or anything. It's just I keep having bad dreams anymore. Tom looked down, biting his lip. Let's look at the seals, Dane urged gently. Gimpy was coming for them when the lioness and Darkmoon passed him on the slope to the beach. The minute she stopped, they knew it was serious. She wore full mail. A company of the swoop's guards waited by the gate, wearing combat gear. One of them carried a banner, crimson silk with a gold lioness rampant, the personal flag of the king's champion. The knight slid from the saddle, hanging shield and sword from the pommel before kneeling to embrace her son. Tom fought tears. You know Fief Mandash? She spoke to all three. Roald and Callie liked her and didn't look any happier than her son. They got ogres, 3 of them. They killed the lord and his son and had the rest of the family trapped in the keep. I have to go. We're the closest king's representatives. Tom swallowed. Ah, ogres are booge. Not booge, huge. The messenger says the male is 8 feet or so. That's not bad, and he's the biggest. Says Alana, who's maybe 5 feet. But her eyes spoke of worry and watchfulness. I'm taking some men, alright? That seemed to reassure the children. Tom, mind your father and Maud, and don't get under people's feet. A hug and a kiss. She took them. And you be good. She tousled his hair and shook hands with Roald and Callie. Tell your seal guests good night, she advised. You need to clean up before supper. All of them went to obey. The knight watched them pat the seals, pulling on an amethyst-stitched glove. Should I go with you, Lioness? Offered Dane. If it's immortals? No, with 20 men I should be fine. That gets me angry as I told Mandash to arm his people. He was too cheap to hire soldiers. But no, we can't teach peasants to use weapons. Or they decide they don't like their overlords. She sighed. I shouldn't speak ill of the dead. I just don't like the timing. I don't like it being immortals. She took one of Dane's hands in both of hers. Her grip was powerful. Will you and Namer look after my family? Don't let anything happen to them. Chills crept up the girl's spine. We won't, Lioness. Alana smiled. Thank you. She drew a deep breath and went to bid goodbye to the children once more. The lioness had been gone for 2 days. Dane had collapsed early into her loft bed, worn out from her evening's lessons. She dreamed. It was a pleasant night in her badger's set. With her belly full, she listened to the kids play. She was about to go for a cool drink of water when her dreams changed. Trees and a moonlit sky tumbled around her. Boats filled with men came onto the beaches, and men crept among the trees, speaking softly and fast. They lit fires, scorching the roosts and blinding her. Into flight she tumbled. Over the roaring cold and salty place, with panic in her throat, there was the light ahead. The one the forest bats had sung about. A beacon of safety. She was the greatest of the people. She could protect them when strange men broke the night rituals. Jane gasped and sat up. Odds bobs, what was that about? With her excellent night vision and the light of the full moon that came in the windows under the eaves, she saw that the rafters overhead were thick with bats, a good 30 of them mixed breeds watching her with nervous eyes. 3 were hoary bats, named for the frosts on their brown fur. By themselves, they would not have been a surprise. They weren't sociable bats. Not like the clusters of big and little brown bats that hung with them, or the handful of pipistrelles. Wing friends, what's amiss? She asked softly. Come and tell me. Within seconds, she was a bat tree, with little bodies festooned on her curls, and parts of her nightshirt. All of them trembled in terror. Hush, she told them, closing her eyes. She thought of deep and even breaths, of safety in caves, the drip and echo of water in high chambers. Slowly, the bats took her calm into themselves. Small talons changed their grip, this time so flesh was not caught along with the cloth. The trembling eased and became a thin vibration. Some of the bolder ones returned to the rafters to give her air. She sent the calm out with them, enticing more of those who clung to her to take the perches they were used to, hanging from wood. The ones left were the hoary bats and the leaders of each group. Jane opened her eyes. Now, let's hear it, one at a time. It was all she could do to stay calm when they described what they had seen. It was her dream. Men, strangers, coming from the woods and from boats on the water, hiding under trees. She had to clamp down on her witnesses a little to make sure the numbers they were describing. Bats tended to count by the way they roosted. Their idea of numbers was flexible. It depended on the breed of bat. Dane knew she couldn't tell the Baron or the riders her friends had seen 6 quarter colonies, or whatever the total was. Not only would that not be helpful, but they would think she was crazy. To the hoary bats who roosted alone, the men had arrived in flocks, like deer they saw grazing at night. Moreover, each bat had come from a different part of the wood that ran along the coast. After scribbling with a stick of charcoal on her drawing pad and squinting to read her own marks, she concluded that each hoary bat had seen nearly 50 men. The big brown bats had seen at least 2 colonies, 60 men or so. Most of the pipistrelles were from one place and had seen less than half of one of their colonies, almost 50. One lone pipistrelle from the wood north of the sloop identified another half colony. The little brown bats had come from the east and south. Each of their sightings came to 2 10th colonies. For them, that meant 200 men all told. All the bats assured her that the counts had not overlapped, and that she took as truth. Their concept of numbers might be odd, but a bat's knowledge of territory was precise to a pin. Jane looked at the numbers, her skin tingling in shock. If the bats were right, they had seen more than 500 strange men coming over land or by sea, and landing near the cove. The bats were more familiar with the locals than those humans might have believed possible. The little animals insisted the strangers were not their humans. Moreover, the strangers all wore metal over some parts of their bodies, and all carried or wore wood tipped with metal, bars of metal. Dane could see their faces in the bats' minds. They were the hard faces of the warriors. Carefully, without frightening the animals, she eased into her breeches and boots. In the process, she talked 2 of the hoary bats into staying behind. The others, the head of each colony, the lone pipistrel, and one particularly scared hoary, clung to her nightshirt and hair. They would go with her, they said. Sarge, who ran the trainees on night watch, and Callie sat in front of the stable, talking. From the look of things, the princess had been unable to sleep. Dane? Sarge asked when she emerged. The girl's blue eyes widened. Abruptly, Dane saw herself as humans must see her. Small, wriggling animals swarming on her, clinging to her hair and clothes. They tried their best to be clean, but a couple of them had lost control of their bowels. I must look like a monster, Dane swallowed a lump in her throat. She hadn't realized how much Callie's opinion, or Sarge's, had come to mean to her. I have to talk to the Baron, she whispered, without looking at them. Callie walked over hesitantly. She stopped, then reached out to touch the furry body. The little brown bat transferred his infections to her in a leap. She squeaked, then let him snuggle into her collar. He smells you on me. Her tiny smile trembled and held. Sarge got up, his brown eyes kind. Come on, girls. The master of the swoop was in his study. Bah. The queen and Joshua, the captain of the swoop's guards, were there as well, seated in comfortable chairs. While Numair stared out one of the windows. What's all this? George asked. His sharp eyes took in Dane's riders as well as Callie's small hanger-on. Aya yelped when she saw Dane. Joshua was on his feet, dagger half drawn. Numair looked around, frowning. Please don't startle them. The bat caught the surge of her own fears. She made herself take a deep breath, get under control. Don't open your eyes, she cautioned the bats. The room was cozily lit from a human standpoint, but not from theirs. They won't hurt anyone. It's only bats, Mama. Sarge's mouth twitched. It was impossible to tell that Kelly herself had been upset by them only a few minutes ago. Aya and Joshua stared at Dane. It's important, sir, she told the Baron. I wouldn't have brought them if it wasn't. May I? Numair asked, pointing to the hoary bat. The animal's nose was already questing, having located interesting smells on the sorcerer's clothes. Gently, Dane handed him over. In one of Numair's gigantic palms, the bat was dwarfed. What news have your friends brought for me? George asked. Dane looked at his face, but saw no trace of mockery or disbelief. Either he's the world's finest player, or he believes in me, she thought. Have you a map? He gestured behind her. She turned and saw a table covered with sheets of parchment. On top was a map of Pirate's Swoop. Holding down the corner of it was a box of small, colored pebbles. Consulting with her friends, she put one at each location where strangers had been seen, explaining to the adults as she worked. All this since Twilight, she said as she finished. We think it's more than 500, all told. She looked at the picture she'd made and blanched. The stones formed a half circle a mile away from the castle and village of Pirate's Swoop. They had been surrounded in the dark. Chapter 9. Things moved so fast, Dane's head spun. Pirate's Swoop was more than prepared for night attacks. Within minutes, Captain Joshua, Thayet, and Sarge had left to quietly wake the village and bring the people back to the castle. With them, they took Dane's promise that livestock would move quietly. Once she had explained things to them, the village animals were eager to help. She felt ashamed of herself for showing them images of the raiders' imaginary stew pots in such gruesome detail, but told herself the cause was a good one. Even the geese and chickens had been willing to go along after that. Hello, Meki. Nice to meet you. Welcome in. Next, she asked the bats to return to their friends in the stable. You won't like the people I'm going to talk to now, she assured them, and they believed her. George had asked her for spies who wouldn't spook less easily than the bats, and that meant only one thing. Owls. Dane had to admit owls were unnerving to deal with, and she liked them. The bats did not. While they weren't natural enemies, there was always a chance an owl would make a mistake, and apologies meant nothing to a dead bat. With the bats gone, she went to the limits of her range, contacting owls and explaining the problem. She wasn't surprised to find that the silent predators were already angry about the invasion. The strangers had chased all their game worth hunting into burrows in earth and tree. Waiting for the owl's report, she and Numair went to the observation deck. From there, they watched as the swoop's gates quietly opened and guards and riders headed for the village to keep the people back, help the people pack and move. Dane noted with approval that the hooves of all the horses and ponies were muffled. With the moon full, the night clear, didn't need torches, a small blessing, since the invaders also had used moonlight to keep their arrival secret. The owls reported, and Dane wrote their information on paper. When they finished, she added the total with fingers that shook. She checked her numbers and came up with the same total. The third check bore the same results. Hi, Brandon. I'm doing good. How are you doing? Her voice emerged as a squeak. Lord Baron? He had come while she was working. I have the whole thing. He raised his eyebrows. So soon? Owls are fast, she pointed out the total. A little more than 600 men had infiltrated the woods. The owls say they aren't moving. They're camped. No fires, but they've settled. Waiting for dawn, the Baron said. Waiting for that. He nodded at the sea. 2 miles out, a fog bank lay on the ocean, its top as high as the tower on which they stood. It took her a minute of looking before she saw that it was wrong. The curved dome was clean, as if the thing were shaped by a sculptor. It was also dead on the water. Fog was neither tidy nor slow. It moved fast and overwhelmed everything in its way. This close, she should not have been able to see the sky, and she ought to have seen it move by now. Numair? George asked. The sorcerer was leaning on the wall, his eyes closed. Transparent black clouds surrounded him. Bits of light flickered in it like fireflies. He shook his head. It's opaque. I can't even feel the weather working spells that are holding it in place. There have to be spells. Thank you, Nicola. Thanks for stopping by. Feel free to hit that follow if you would like to catch more. Ouch. Sorry. Suddenly itchy chin. Probably got mosquito bite. Fog is defined by natural law like any atmospheric creation. In the absence of those laws, we have to assume magic, which I should be able to detect. Since I can't detect it, that argues the presence of dampenant spells in the fog. Dampenant spells. George's face was tight. We're boxed in then, like rats in a trap. Whatever's in that fog will hit us in the morning, sure as the crooked god cheats. Why do we have no idea this was coming? The mage looked at his friend. George, there are more illusion spells and diffusion spells than there are stars. Scrying is an inexact magic. I have to know what to look for. Alright, I'm good, but even I can be overwhelmed or outflanked. Alana and John would tell you the same thing. George put a hand on Numera's shoulder. I'm sorry. I didn't mean you failed at your job. It's just been a long time since I've been sucker punched. I don't like it. His face had taken on a harsh new lines. They'll crush us between what's out there and what's out there and those 600 at our backs. What? And the army won't come before we are bruised, at least, Numer said. Aye. How many warriors here? 80, not counting the riders. George drew a deep breath and looked at Dane. What can your friends do to help? She swallowed. Don't ask me to make them fight, she pleaded. They're not... This isn't about them. I can't ask them to fight and die for humans. Shivering, the girl remembered the marsh and the slaughtered birds. Please say you understand. George's silence drew out for a long moment, but it was impossible to read what was in his face. At last, he smiled and patted her arm. I don't, entirely. But then, I'm all too human. Will you ask them to watch, then? To let us know if more soldiers come? Or if the ones out there start to move? She nodded and whispered, Thanks. Sending out her request, Dane settled to wait for her friends. Reports from the woods. As she listened, guards and riders began to return with the villagers. Never before had an evacuation gone so well. The livestock had been waiting for their owners to come out. There were no problems with catching animals, not even chickens. The trainees at least had a good idea of why this was so. The villagers did not. And fled to the castle as if their own animals had turned to ghosts. Dawn, the first raiders came into sight to find the village empty and the castle gates closed. The battlements were lined with warriors who did not look surprised in the least to see raiders outside their walls. When the sun rose above the horizon, fog rolled over Pirate's Swoop. A gentle hand was shaking her, and a wet tongue was bathing her face. Dane looked up and saw Anua, Kalasan, and Tahoy. I'm sorry, I must have gone to sleep. She turned scarlet with embarrassment and tried to get up. Her knees buckled. Goddess, how long have I been here? Anua caught her on one side, Callie on the other. Since the middle of the night. The Baron says we owe the warning to you and your friends. Think my friends. I just passed the word on. She massaged the cramps from her legs. Callie gave her a roll stuffed with fruit and held a jug of juice to go with it. Dane was still hungry when she finished. What's going on now? She asked, accepting a sausage roll from her young friend. We're in trouble. This, Anua's wave took in the fog surrounding them, isn't just fog. It carries dampening spells for the gift. Plenty of them. We're not sure how many sorcerers are out there holding it, but there have to be a lot of them. Whoever engineered this planned for everything. Dane looked at the two humans. That hurts you both, right? You're both gifted? Anua nodded. Lucky for us, there's no need for magic just yet. Mary got word out for the palace and to the king before the fog came in. Dane looked at the woman, wondering if the mage had found anyone nearby who could help. Reading her, Anya shook her head. I'd best put on clean clothes then, and get my bow. She caught an angry call from below. And let Cloud know I'm alive. She's upset with me. Can I go with her? Asked Callie. Anya smiled. Of course. Just make sure you stay with Dane. If you run into your brother, have him report to me. Dane glanced around to see who was there, and saw the Queen, Numair, and the Baron, with trainees and guardsmen armed and keeping watch. Where should I report to? Here, take your time. Nothing can happen as long as this mess hangs over us. She nodded. Let's go, Callie. I need to clean up. Roald and Tom were waiting for Dame in her loft. She shooed them downstairs while she changed, combed her hair, got her weapons, and comforted the frightened bats. In the stable below, she soothed the ponies, all of whom knew something bad was going on. She was uneasy herself. She'd been fogged in before at the swoop, but it wasn't the same. The mist felt dirty. Sorry, my cat just shoved her tail into my mouth. The mist felt dirty and the hackles were up on the back of her neck. The two boys, both gifted, were in worse condition than Anya and Callie, and clung to Dane's hands as she walked them back to the inner court. On her trip down, she hadn't looked at the new arrangements. Now she did. Long tents were set up for healers. Water barrels were stacked everywhere. Temporary corrals held the village animals. Seeing them, Dane went to thank them, assure them they were safe, and reinforce the need for their good behavior. It was the first time anyone had explained that raider attacks were the reason why they were so often dragged up to the castle without warning. Understanding that, they were more than eager to help. Honestly, you'd think people would have told them before now and saved everyone trouble, Dane growled. Speaking of people, where's their masters? Some are on the wall, Tom said, looking up. Dane saw villagers armed with bows, shields, and metal caps among the guards and riders. The rest are in the lower levels. We're dug into the rock. There's plenty of room down below. She was startled. She'd never dreamed there might be more to the castle than what she saw. How many more surprises does your Da have up his sleeve? Tom grinned. A lot. Sarge waved to her from the wall. She waved back, hoping her face didn't reveal her thoughts. She had human friends here too. Friends who might be hurt or die. With Ma and Granda gone, she thought she was free of that kind of pain. But she was less free than ever. She never loved anyone as she had her family. But others had come to be important to her. Evan and Miri, who gave her acceptance. Anya, an elder sister, the rider officers, respect for her judgment. Each of those people now was a potential wound. Thinking grim thoughts, she climbed the outside stair to the deck, the children following her. She should have stayed wild, she told herself. I never should have gotten back up on my hind legs. Never? Another part of her asked. Never means not meeting sea lions and griffins. Never means not hearing whales sing. Never means not learning how to heal. She sighed. On deck, once more she saw 2 guards and 2 trainees. Elnor and Pedrak, on duty with bows strung and ready. The Queen and Anya were armed as well. Uri, like Sarge, was elsewhere on the walls, keeping an eye on the other trainees. Baron George was talking quietly to one of the guards. Wyatt smiled at her and crooked a finger at her son and daughter. "Come talk to me," she ordered, and they obeyed. Tom went to stand with his father, and Dane sought out Numair. "Are you all right?" He looked tired and strained. His mouth was tight, as if he were afraid he might say too much if he opened it. He barely managed a smile for her. "I'm scared," he said quietly. She looked up at him. "I'm the only one who understands," she thought. If the lioness were here, he'd have said it to her, but she's not, and I am. There's magic in the air, lots of it, and everyone looks to him for a miracle. Right now, he can't even tell if this magic is the right kind, and he's afraid. She put her hand in his, and he squeezed it tight. "I hate to theorize without information, but I need a working plan," he told her softly. "As it is, I either hold the spells off the swoop, or the others can function, or I leave the dampeners on them and punch through myself to fight with what I have. The problem is that as a warrior mage, my talents are limited, and I have no healing magic at all. If Alana were here, we could work off each other, but..." His face tightened again. And for those of you who've been around long enough to have been with me while reading Numair's book 1, you would notice a discrepancy there because Numair did start out as a healer. Apparently the explanation for why he can no longer heal now will be in the next book. Live crow birth? What? No, that's no what. And one of Alana's kids. Not Numair. Flying straight out of the womb. Zoom. No, this is not that kind of story. And also Tree Man. Yeah. That's another book as well. "That's it then," she said, trying to think aloud as he did. "They lured the lioness off and put an army between her and us, just for that." He nodded. "Which means they've been watching us all along." Dane and Numair both jumped, but blah. Wrong voice, but blah. Dane and Numair both jumped when George spoke behind him. "They know we've been talking. We've the queen here, and the next two in line for the throne." Dane and Numair looked at each other and chorused, "The Stormwings." "That's why they were spying out the sea coast," Numair went on. "They were waiting for us to arrive and get settled. I'll bet they also made sure none of our army or navy was close enough to help." Something occurred to him. His eyes lit. "Dane, your magic. How is it?" She was surprised he even asked. "It's the same as ever. You told me yourself. I couldn't turn it off." "Wild magic," Numair breathed. "It's everything. No matter how many dampeners they lay on us, you'll be able to function." Something tugged at the back of her eyes. Something ugly and sour. "I can't send my friends to die," she warned. But already her attention had shifted. "Bows!" she yelled, getting hers off her back and putting an arrow to the string. "Bows! Storming in the air!" George shoved Tom down between the wall and the floor of the deck, grabbed the prince and princess and did the same with them. Wyatt and Anya had their weapons in hand. The trainees and guards were armed and ready. The Baron had drawn his sword and dagger. Numair swore so vividly that the children looked at him in awe and delight, and added, "The wind's shifting. I don't need the fog anymore." "The dampeners?" George asked hopefully. The mage shook his head. "Still there. The fog laid them down. Now the spells will stick to all that the fog touched." Within minutes, the fog was gone, and the world around them was lit by a mid-morning sun. Dane gasped at the scene that lay before them. The fleet lay in the cove. 5 longboats, or galleys, rowed by chained men below decks, and 7 smaller vessels, all bristling with warriors in their arms. Behind them lay 4 barges, huge, flat-bottomed boats with no apparent way to move. Large wooden structures sat in the middle of each, things that were wood, rawhide, and rope knit together. Each barge carried a stock of round stone balls and a complement of barrels. Around them, around their rims, and around the weird structures were huge bags of sand. "Such a big siege for such a little castle," Thayet murmured. "Where could they have sailed from?" "Caporals," George replied quietly. "They're Carthag's allies now." "What are the big flat ones?" Dane asked, searching the air for the storm wings she had felt. The queen raised a spyglass to her eye. "War barges, the terror of the Carthagi navy." She offered the glass so Dane could see clearly. The things in the middle are catapults. Each barge is counterbalanced with magic and ballast, so the catapults can hurl stone balls or liquid fire. They can pound the walls of a place like this to rubble in the space of a day. "So this emperor has declared war?" Dane asked. She had found the Stormwing high above. He stooped, dropping onto the deck of the largest of the galleys, laughing as humans scrambled away from him. "No Carthagi flags," Anya said. "This isn't official." Dane stared at her. "Surely that makes no difference. A flag's only a bit of cloth, after all." "A war is not a war until an official declaration is made and the armies march under flags." Anya pursed her mouth cynically. "None of those men or our friends in the woods are wearing uniforms either." "He can do that?" Dane asked, outraged. "It's not a war till this emperor fellow says it is." "Or until his majesty does," Numair remarked. Anya said, "We can't expect any help from our navy?" "A week ago, Scanran wolf boats hit all along the north coast," George told them. "Most of the navy is up there, or on our part of the inland sea." "How nice," Prince Rold muttered. "Heads up, darlings," George said. "I think we're about to hear terms." The Stormwing was taking flight again, an elegant white flag in one claw and something much smaller in the other. "This is not good." Numair too had a spyglass. "See the red robes at the bow of each ship? And there are at least 4 yellow robes per barge." He lowered his glass. "A scarlet robe from the University of Carthag means you have your mastery, the same level as a Mithran black and gold robe. University yellow robes are adepts. They brought the barges here, and their spells keep them afloat and working." "What robe are you?" Dane asked, watching the Stormwing approach. "None," he replied. "Ever put one of those things on? They're hot." "He's a black robe," Anya said, hands tight on her bow as she watched the monster. "There are only 7 of them in the world." The Stormwing was 100 feet away. "Bows," Thayet said quietly. In the same movement, she and all the archers on the deck raised their weapons, sighting on the messenger. He hovered in the air before them, smirking. "Now, is that nice?" Jane clenched her teeth. This was the one who had come between her and her maw. This close, she could put an arrow clean through him. The creature dropped a scroll onto the stone between Thiet and George. The queen didn't blink. It was the Baron who picked it up and opened. To Queen Thiet of Tortal and Baron George Cooper of Pirate's Swoop. From the Lord of the Free Corsairs, Mahil Edes, greetings. By virtue of superior numbers and armament, I claim the castle, village, point and waters of Pirate's Swoop, the League of Free Corsairs. Should you prove obdurate? Obdurate? Whispered Dane, without taking her eyes from the target. Stubborn, supplied Numair. George continued to read. I shall have no choice but to reduce the castle, enslave the survivors, kill all beasts, and sow its fields with salt. You have one chance only to avoid death. Capture or enslavement. Surrender to me the person and effects of Thiet of Tortal and her children, Prince Rold and Princess Calassin. You have what remains of this day and tonight to reflect. If the 3 persons named are not given over to us by such time as the dawn sun will clear the horizon, we will commence bombardment by catapult. If you wish to signify acceptance of these terms, you may do so by running up 3 white pennants. Calmly he rolled the message up again, and as calmly ripped it to pieces and tossed them over the wall. Looks like Ozor decided what advantage he needs against the king, muttered Anua. There was a time when your folk were no one's errand boys, the Baron told the Stormwing. His voice was even and almost friendly. We don't mind helping out, Stormwing told him, baring his filthy teeth in a grin. In a good cause, you understand. He looked at Dane. Hello, pink pig. Zane Bitterclaws will be here to see you soon. He nodded at Anua. Both of you. Turning back to George and Thiet, he said, Well, your answer? The Baron spat on the stone near his feet. Get out before I let them make you into a pincushion. The Stormwing's giggle was high and grating. Oh, good. We hoped you'd say that. He pumped his wings, pulling away from them fast. A hunter's screech split the air. Dane's osprey friend shot past the humans. He tangled his feet into the monster's hair and hung on, pecking for the monster's eyes. The Stormwing shrieked in fury and tried to dislodge the bird from his head, but lacked the arms with which to do it. Dane, call him off, the mayor said, his voice suddenly tight. I didn't call him on. Do it, her friend yelled. Before them, gold fire was stretching above the galleys to form a square, anchored by the red robes below. Come back, Dane yelled, putting her will behind it. It's not worth it. Come back. Something was pounding through the air, making her ears hurt. The osprey broke off the attack and returned. Anua grabbed the children and hustled them off the deck. I almost had his eyes, the bird complained. Just one more wing beat. The gold fire in the square exploded, knocking everyone down. Like a nightmare, a horde of Stormwings blasted through, led by Zane Bitterclaws. They filled the air with a degree of stench and evil that had not been felt in the world in 4 centuries. To that, they added pure fear and a weight that crushed the humans before them. Something huge and red in color, almost seemed to shove the gigantic flock through the gate. But it vanished. It had only been an impression. Dane was too busy trying to breathe with a full pack of terror in her mind to think about it for more than a second. She straightened, an act of will that took all the courage she had. At the palace, she had a taste of what the flock of the monsters could be like, but it was nothing like this. She brought up her longbow. At the edge of her vision, she saw Numair, then the Baron, struggled to their feet. She smiled, blinked the sweat from her eyes, and loosed her arrow. The messenger had chosen to attack with the flock, as she suspected. Her arrow went clean through him. Before he had struck the rocks below, she had another arrow on the string and loosed. It flew in a volley as the other humans released their arrows. Battle raged. Archers, Dane included, fired bolt after bolt, making sure of the target before they loosed. The mayor made a hard decision, fast, sitting against the wall, ready to trip no one up. He lifted the dampener spells. The people with lesser gifts, including those who knew fire and war spells, got to work. Aniwa quickly drew a protective circle around the mage to hide him from the Stormwings. Dane fought 2 wars. Her animal friends wanted to rescue her, but she refused to let them. She soon learned that keeping her will on so many species, in the woods, the castle, and in the air, was impossible. Pain shot through her head. Twice she lost control of the gulls and ospreys. With triumphant screams, the birds leapt into the air to harry the Stormwings. With claws and beaks they attacked, trying to dive the monsters into the rocks or into each other. Tears rolled down Dane's cheeks. Mechanically, she fired as birds fought and died, cut by steel wings or torn to pieces by steel claws and teeth. There was no chance that her power to heal would be pulled from her in this battle as it had been in the marsh. A wound here was death on the rocks below. When the Stormwings attacked, so did the Land Raiders, reinforced by the fleet once the fog lifted. For the rest of the morning and into the long afternoon, they tried to bring rams and ladders up to the castle walls, but were driven back. Eventually, the Stormwings lost interest in the battle and went to feast on the enemy dead outside the walls. They had what they wanted, no matter who won. They left the air over the deck first, not wanting to go on defending themselves against the archers and the birds. When the deck had been quiet for a while, George ordered Dane to rest. She found some shade close to Numair and sat, leaning her throbbing head on her updrawn knees. No, she told the animals who wanted to fight. No, no, no! With her last refusal, she tightened her grip until they gave in. Look at you. While she'd battled her friends, Miri had come to the deck with Laston and one of the maids. All 3 carried laden trays and wineskins. The fisher girl came to Dane, frowning. Your skin's a nice lobster red. You landlubbers don't think about reflected glare. She rubbed a cool salve onto Dane's hot face and arms. Callie, where's the tonic? The princess filled a tankard from her wineskin and handed it over. Drink, or you'll be sick. Mary put the tankard to Dane's lips. She took a gulp and choked. It was tomato juice laden with salt and other things. Drink it all. Goddess, that's nasty, she croaked. She had the Smith god's own headache. Her hands throbbed and her fingers refused to close. The muscles of both arms were screaming. She had never shot so much in her life. Nasty it may be, but it'll keep you from collapsing on us. Have some more. Maud brewed it up special for you. Only think how her feelings would be hurt if you refused it. She sat up, wincing as her head pounded. Maud? The old woman in charge of the nursery. That's right. She's a healer, isn't she? From her cradle, Dane had been taught to do as a healer said. She drew a deep breath and drank what was in the tankard as fast as possible.
Restream bot.
For a moment, her stomach surged in her head. Screamed, then most of the pain and sickness were gone. Goddess bless all healers, Dane whispered. Even her hands had improved a little. Hi, Nicola. Welcome. She sat up. and the maid gave her a bowl of stew and a roll. Dane took them and began to eat as Miri and the servants looked at Numair. Should she even be out here? She asked Callie. Hanua put a protective circle around this place, Miri said over her shoulder. Dane smiled at Callie, then looked at Miri. How's it going? Not bad. That came from Numair. He sat with his head tilted back against the wall, his eyes closed, his face pouring sweat. Pillows had been put around his sides to make him comfortable. Someone, a red-headed 6-year-old Dane suspected, had tucked his prized stuffed bear under one of the mage's big hands. They can't breach the walls. Can't even get near them. They're having a horrible time with the archers. We're holding our own. Can you drink or eat? Callie asked. Maud says you should, if it won't distract you from the spells. He nodded. The girl fetched a cup of water from a nearby barrel and held it to his lips. He drank without opening his eyes. How are you doing, Your Highness? Please don't call me that. The girl's voice cracked. It's because of me being a princess that all this is happening. It's my fault, and I hate it. Dane rolled to her knees and went to the child. Here now, stop that, she said, patting Callie's shoulder. The girl turned and buried her head on Dane's shirt. She was crying and fighting hard to keep from making any sound. She's only 8, Dane thought sadly. You got it all wrong, sweet thing. Those men would do this no matter who they are after. They could have asked for Numair here, who's in trouble in that Karthak place, or Sarge, just a runaway slave. It isn't because of you or Rold or anybody. You're just the excuse. You must blame somebody. Blame them, Karthaki. Numair corrected. He was smiling a little. Dane's right, Calastin. The person who commits an action is the one responsible for it, not the people he commits the action upon. They said it's because of Mama and Rold and me. Callie blew her nose and wiped her face. So they would. Dane burned with fury. The riders, the guards. Even she had put herself in spots where a fight might sometimes be the only answer. They all knew the risks, but to twist a little girl's mind so she blamed herself for the fight? That was horrible. Evil people say evil things to make good people cry in doubt. Don't let them get that hold on you. It's because they're too cheap to buy food. They'd rather steal it if they can. That's really what it's about. Calastin? Maud was in the stair calling. I need you below. There's healing to be done. Callie sniffed and wiped her face again. Coming! Dane watched her go. But she's only a child. That child is a strong, natural healer. Numair hadn't once opened his eyes. She's partly untrained still, but Maud can talk her through whatever has to be done. How are you managing? Dane looked at him warily. What do you mean? I mean, your friends out there must be dying to go after the raiders. I definitely recall you saying you won't let them fight. The birds got away from you this morning, didn't they? Dane clenched her fists and immediately regretted it. I'm alright. Liar, he said, almost with amusement. Is it a strain? The air was singing to her. What? She got to her feet. Where was it coming from? Numair? Do you hear it? Hear what? It was like the griffins, only different. A singing coming from the north, low and close. It filled her eyes and ears and beat against the sore palms of her hands. Anya was with George and Captain Joshua, trying to talk Thayet into going below. Then, when she felt her circle of protection on the deck evaporate. Down! She pushed the queen to the floor. George and Joshua had their swords out as the source of the music came thundering up from the below, surged over their heads. Numair was on his feet instantly. his watch over the castle shattered. The dragon shrieked its fury and broke away to head out to sea. She turned and came back. Everyone was on the floor but Dane. She stood on the wall, scant inches between her toes and empty air, awed by the glory before her. Scarlet wings and scales glittered like rubies along that long and graceful form. The wings, fashioned like a bat's, were huge, delicate structures of deep red, lit from within by silver bones. As the dragon passed inches over her head, almost knocking her onto the deck, she could see orange and yellow scales decorating the great creature's belly. Like the stormwings, her claws and teeth were silver, but not the hard silver of metal. Her song almost deafened the girl. She struggled to force the notes into a form she could understand until she heard, "Kidnappers! Filthy kidnappers! Run them! Take the raven-haired one to a cage in the ships!" Dane shook her aching head. What was she hearing? The dragon came in low, almost ceased before having to reverse her flight. "Bring me here! You will send me home with your human tricks!" The girl closed her eyes. "What tricks?" she shouted with her magic as loudly as she could. Toy yelped. Below, the horses screamed, their delicate ears in pain. The dragon came in again and yanked the sword from Joshua's fist. The man was flung to the stone, where he lay, stunned. "Stop!" Dane yelled. "Stop! What kidnappers? What lies?" The dragon was coming again. "Send me home! I demand it!" Numair threw fire at her. Fire that settled on her like a cloak and blew away. The long head twisted around to focus on him. "Human mage, you will pay for stealing me!" Jane threw herself at Numair and knocked him down. The long shadow fell over them and stayed. The stone beneath them quivered. Somewhere, distant, a number of people screamed. The deck was 60 feet across. The dragon had taken 20 of those feet for her person, 4 feet on hind legs, and cluttered a good 20 feet more with her tail and wings. Everyone but Dane and Numair, between her forepaws, was pressed to the wall or had made it to the stairs. Dane jumped to her feet and raised her hands. "I think I have the knack of it now," she thought. "For please, goddess, I hope I do." Putting her hands on that scarlet breast, she called, "Listen, Wing Sister." Information flooded into her mind as the dragon let out an ear-rending screech. Dane's nose began to bleed. The intensity of her contact with the dragon's mind had overloaded her body's limit. "Who speaks?" Dane drew his breath, forcing her heart and lungs to slow down. "Me. Joking." Disbelief was loud in the dragon's mind and in hers. "No joke." Dane said, "What did they tell you, the red robes on the ships?" Why did she feel as if she was healing something? A quick look inside showed her copper fire streaming through her hands, being pulled out of her and into the dragon. When she tugged, she realized she couldn't yank away. Her palms were locked against the dragon's scales. The dragon was hesitant now. They say, Raven-haired one and her kits stole me from home, brought me here to destroy boats." "Can't you spell a lie?" Dane asked. She was getting a sense of the mind behind the huge, cat-like eyes. The dragon was not much older than a human of Miri's age, and very frightened. Panic-stricken, in fact. Only smell on red robes was eaters. The stormwings were vivid in the dragon's mind. "They brought you the robes. They brought you with the eaters. Do not understand." The dragon was confused and scared. She was quivering under Dane's hands. "Tired, sick, little one." Dane felt the dragon's hide ripple. It was like a convulsion. Or a contraction, Ma's daughter realized. "You're having a baby," she cried. Suddenly, the dragon's mind filled with a hot excitement that shattered Dane's magical hearing. Her hands dropped free of the dragon and she clapped them to her ears. 1 second, I hear a cat growling at dog. Never mind, it wasn't cat growling at dog, it was cat growling at cat. And that's how the Rishi block works. Yeah. It doesn't seem to work too well with Trovo. It only caught that one post. There have been a few that are rather weird ones, so I think they're all bots, so I'm not too worried about it. Does it work at all with Picarto? Yeah. Like the site works? Yeah, yeah. I think it's just it's all depending on the APIs that each site makes available. It works well for YouTube and Facebook. Or had worked well for Facebook. I can't stream to Facebook anymore. And Kick. Excuse me. Suddenly, the dragon's mind filled with a hot excitement that shattered Dane's magical hearing. Her hands dropped free of the dragon, and she clapped them to her ears. The dragon screeched and launched herself into the air. Before Dane realized she was leaving, she had gone, flying north along the cliffs. Her image blurred, then vanished. She can do magic, the girl realized with awe. Nimeri got to his feet and jerked her into his arms. You little idiot, he whispered, hugging her so tightly she squeaked. She was in labor and on her way home, Dane told him, feeling mashed. They opened the gate nearby and it pulled her in. I think it killed her baby. Maybe it would have killed her. It was just what you said. The wild magic was just sucked right out of me. So I think she's healing. She's been educated, Numair. From books. Her mind. It's all organized, like even after me to do. Around them, the others were coming forward. And Joshua's in the guard's eyes. She saw an emotion that looked like fear. Someone ran up the deck. Ferrant. Master Numair? The healers are asking if something's wrong. If you don't shield them now, we'll lose Sarge. Oh no, Wyatt whispered. Numair released Dane and sat against the wall once more. His eyes closed, and the quality of air around him changed. Dane decided she might like to sit down for a while herself. Her legs folded before she told them to, and she never remembered hitting the ground. Okay, that's gonna be it for tonight. My voice is starting to fail me. We'll have one chapter next week and the epilogue. So we're almost done book 1. We'll finish it next week. Move on to book 2 the week after. I am going to try to do some Final Fantasy this week. I need to renew my sub. I'm going to try. Anywho, let's see who's streaming. return to your tiny husband. Ye. I'm gonna send you all to Outcast Andrew once more. He's playing some Dead by Daylight. They shall protect you with the mighty axe. Ye. Okay. So have a good night, everyone. I'll see you, I'm gonna say Wednesday? Have a good night, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.